This is a starting point, some of you know. So I make what your role should be today or what your role is. I think we should spend a few minutes about what you already know, any stereotypes. I know Minnesota nice, but we can leave that Minnesota nice for the next 2 hours and be frank and address some of your fears, some of your concerns. And the environment we're at right now, I think nothing is hidden. Everything is out, thank God, to 45. Everything is on TV. So be open-minded, whatever attention or tension or anything that you feel, just relax and just come as you are. There's no going to be judgment. I've heard everything by the book. I've done almost hundreds of workshops and heard all the questions and everything that you can imagine that will offend someone, and I really don't. I get excited when someone asks me something that other people will find very offensive, because then that gives me an opportunity to give the right information. And then that way, we have a less individual in Minnesota who have less stereotypes. So can we spend a few minutes, and one or two of you or three of you just, we have a microphone, just say a few words that hopefully today you want to be addressed before we get going. Thanks. Now be brave. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, wow.
Okay.
Now I broke it because I'm so loud. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I have a question. I work with a lot of different community groups and faith communities around housing. And I've struggled sometimes with reaching out to the imam at the Burnsville class. He's been very responsive, and I so appreciate the partnership. But I'm not always sure how comfortable that relationship is, and if there should be more of a distance and a respect because I'm a woman. Maybe that's just like a very basic question, but I feel like, in my professional role, I should be able to have open communication, but I'm not sure if that's appropriate. So if you can help me with that, if I should be going to somebody else, or just in what's the most effective and respectful as a holy man, and speaking with faith leaders. In the Christian approach, it's more like as equals. So if you could speak to that, it would be helpful to me.
Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, so that question has so many different roles. I'll get to it quickly. It's there are a lot of stereotypes about Muslim women are oppressed and are in charge. One of my newest friends said that, he said, we want to develop a relationship with you, but we want to get to the imams first, so then they approve of us coming to the Somali women or the Muslim women. And that really offended me. Usually I'm like, my guard is up, even though I'm developing a relationship. So I said, just hold on. Here you go, you say Muslim women are oppressed, Muslim women are this, and Muslim women are that, when you're outside the community. Yet the first person you want to connect when you want in the community, you go to the oppressor. The person you're calling is oppressing. So that is a double standard, and you should not be doing that. So what I told him was, you really should think about developing relationship, think about inclusion or inclusivity. You need to develop relationship with women, relationship with men, relationship with young women, immigrants. Develop relationship outside just the faith-based communities. And I know that's where the community goes, that's where they feel comfortable, but the imams don't have all answers. In fact, you need to develop more relationships, and that's why we're here. So the more you can go out and figure things and develop relationships with your day-to-day human being that you're trying to serve. That will be amazing. The faith leaders, as Christianity, as Jews, or even non-believers, they have a role to play, and they don't have all the answers. So what I would propose is, number one, if you're approaching someone who leads the faith, we have some who are very, very religious, who will not shake your hand, who will not look at a woman who looks beautiful and, just regular you are, or sometimes the way I am too. You don't have to shake their hands. Be specific of what you want to know. You want to develop a relationship. They're very, very busy. Some of them have 400, 500 followers, and they don't have the capacity just to have a conversation and build relationship. So go in and develop a relationship before you start project, so it becomes a continual relationship building. People are really, really tired, including myself. People are coming when they already have an agenda. The biggest turn off, that's what it is. So again, the woman, a Muslim thingy about imam and equality, there's some to it. Some of the other religions, they have their own specific, their own way of respecting you. Respect them, but you don't have to cover up when you're meeting them. You don't have to behave a certain way. You don't need to hug them. You don't need to handshake them. But just don't change. Don't wear a scarf. Don't wear anything. Just be modesty who you are, and then that way the imam will not be nervous, because it's like, oh, this woman who, if she was going out there, would not wear what she's wearing now. Why would you even change? And that's what creates the tension and the conflict. So don't connect to community just through one door. You would not want to be, if I just want to come in and I only go to your church, you will be losing a lot of people, or I'll be losing a lot of people. So develop a relationship with your school moms, the janitorial groups. Don't discriminate anybody. Think about, do I have a youth in my circle? Do I have old people in my circle? Do I have a college educator? Do I have an intern? Open up interns, open up opportunities for people, and then you will see all of a sudden you have so many Somalis that you don't know which one to call to a specific thing. I saw someone at the hand back. Yes?
I primarily work with youth
Yep.
and young adults,
Mhm.
and I teach work readiness.
Mhm.
And one thing that we teach in work readiness is eye contact and a firm handshake.
Mhm.
So do you have any suggestions, or is that a myth that they're not supposed to have eye contact or shake hands, or can you share a little bit on that?
Awesome. That is the most stereotypes I heard. In many cultures, eye contact, we were told that Somalis, you don't do eye contact. In fact, that's the number one way you build relationship and trust. You need to look at people in their eyes. I look at people like that in their face. So I think the interpretation comes from your parent. You cannot really, when you're mad and you're doing like this to your parent, that is big no-no in our culture. Because you have to respect them. Your eyes need to be showing a kindness, not anger and that kind of thing. But if you're developing a relationship, being outside the world, eye contact is so important in our culture. It's where people see you, whether you're lying or not. I can immediately tell when someone is not being honest through their eyes. So this eye contact is a universal thing. I don't know where this came from. The only way I'm thinking it came from was parent-child relationship. And so in the respect that you can't really look your parents or elder person by showing that the way you look at, you need to look at a respectful way. So long story short, eye contact is important. So I hope that myth is gone today. About the handshake, you gotta introduce them how doing handshake. So if they're young millennial or young Somali kids, depending on if they come from a conservative house, they may not shake the hand, but we have to teach them, give them the option of, hey, if you go to job interview, you need to do the firm handshake is part of showing confidence. Give them all the tools, and then they can use them. So do not let anything out because of either the belief system or that. It could be that we need to teach our kids and our community that there is a certain way to get opportunities of jobs, and maybe because you're doing a weak handshake or someone who don't understand you, you didn't handshake, you may lose that unemployment. And we already have 25% of unemployment for our Somali youth, and I think our kids of color as well. So give every tool possible and let them make the decision. Thank you. So we're gonna get going because I want us. So quickly, I've been in Minnesota for 16 years, married, no kids. Isuroon is 7 years old, and I want to cut and show you a 2-minute video, and then we'll get busy. So, a lot of people say, where are you guys from? So this is Africa's continent, and we are, we came from East Africa, which is a corner of somewhere in Africa, right here. I don't know if you see it. And so a lot of people question, well, what are our ethnicity? If you look back, some of the things that we're on internet and everywhere, we're East African. We've been there for hundreds of years, and genetically, sometimes people say, well, you're not black enough. You don't look like Africans. You look weird in terms of if you compare us to the whole other African. So we're really, really, really an African immigrant, African genetically. 60% of our DNAs are African DNA. So I don't know what to tell other people, but that's where we are. The East Africans have a little bit of, their bone structure is different, but some people thought we had Arab blood mixed in us or some European blood mixed in us, but more than half we are actually African. So this is the old pictures of 1950s, 1940s, so I pulled those from the internet, so this is who we are from. Gender role, we hear a lot about the religious influence, but maybe 50 years ago, your mom and dad's mom stayed home most of it, and dad was the breadwinner, so that is how we grew up. And moms and women stayed home. But those who are staying home full-time and having babies and taking care of everyone else, you know, that's not an easy job. I wish there was a way dads could stay home and moms could go out and see when they do or two, how hard they work. So it's a full-time job. But after the war started, the role had changed, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Women's role again. The picture on the left side is a Somali nomad, and you can see the conservatism and wearing all the clothes now we wear. Changes happen throughout the war. So again, less education because families don't have a lot of money. Usually a decision is made, and this is, I don't think it's something about only us or Africa. Families always make a decision that boys gets the first opportunity of going to work or going to school, and because they say, well, why bother? She's going to get married and anyway stay home. So you have a lot of women a lot of young girls who grew up to be moms who didn't have opportunities to go to school. So when the war started, really everything had changed and a shift, and women did a lot of leadership, took over a lot of leadership and both earning income and that. Demographically, the war had killed millions, but WHO, World Health Organization, it says it's about worth 11 million or so. And then in Africa, almost 56% are below 25. Somalis in Somalia, and I think here too, 60% of us are below 30. So that tells you we're a very young community in terms of age-wise. And then again, it's age structure. Let's talk about religion. We're Sunnis. You hear Shia, Sunnis. I would say 98% of us are Sunnis. And then you can see a lot of Muslims don't only live Arab world, they also are in Africa and Asia, and also some Europe, but the largest are Indonesia. We heard a lot about people not knowing what are the differences between Islam and Muslim. Because I was born into the religion and into the environment, I didn't even know how to define what the definitions were. So I had to go in and figure out. One of my friends asked and said, well, what are the differences? So if you can look at it, the two are different. So it is really important that you learn when you're using, when you're talking about Islam, when you're talking about Muslim, they're two different ones. And that will help you understand as you're talking about when people say, I get confused when people say, well, the Islamists were terrorists, and I'm like, I don't even understand what they're talking about. But these vocabs will help you as you read things internet, you hear news, at least now you say, are they talking about the individual, or are they talking about the religion, or the practice, or the belief? A lot of people are very, very confused about us. We're really oral community. And even those of us who went to colleges, we want to be able to have that verbal, very connected, close. We're a culture that is not about transactional. We're all about relationship and relational. So to develop relationship, that proximity of being close to one another and seeing each other, that's where the eye contact comes in. Developing relationship is very clear. So when you do one bad experience, when a woman comes to your service and she asks help or she wants to get some support and she experiences one bad experience, she will be on the phone or everywhere else she goes and she'll tell her story. And that's how we relate to one another. On the other hand, if we do one good service, sometimes some people say, I've only helped one Somali and now my caseload is overloading. I don't know why these people all of a sudden are in love with me. And I will say, oh, you got free marketing. You just helped someone in a good way, and then guess what she's doing? She's saying, oh, so-and-so helped me, and then everyone else is getting your contact. So you should ask your boss a raise or you're doing something because you're doing a good job. So we use something, we're always saying, well, what's new? That's how we say salam alaikum, which is the greeting, and then the next thing is what's new, which is you will learn a few words of Somalis later. So we really talk to each other and talk about social isolation and talk about depression and that kind of. When we are not close to one another or having that, thank God, the technology of talking to one another, we like that proximity of being close, coming together. The faith-based institutions, that's why they're very critical. But we need to have alternative spaces that other than religion. So it's very important. So what's new could be the killer of relationship, either good or bad. So I'm hoping that the writing stuff, many Somali families talk about my service is being cut because here in USA we use everything in written. And the literacy is very high. Also paperwork, the country's been at war for almost 30 years. You also have to understand most people come from refugee camps. And refugee camps, the NGOs serve people. So even if they went to school, they lose that sense of doing things for them. And there are no lot of NGOs or a lot of help that community members will go in and say, read this paper for me, fill the form for me. So a lot of families will lose because of the process of the paperwork that you're waiting from them and for them not getting used for paperwork. So our work now, Isuroon, is turning into filling forms for the community. So there are a lot of disconnections are happening there.
Can I ask
Sure.
about that?
Mm.
So a lot of us here work with Somali families around services that
Yes.
require specific forms and paperwork and that sort of thing. And I've seen that dynamic come up where it's like, well, we just give you 100 forms and you just fill them out and
Yeah.
you move on to the next step.
Yeah.
Do you have suggestions for how we can better serve those families when there is a process that requires a lot of paperwork, like how to kind of break through, I guess, that cultural divide?
That's really good question, and usually it's really, so what you can do is you work with the universities, work with colleges, have open doors for Somali interns, immigrant interns, because they speak the language. Some of them actually don't, but try to open the doors for recruiting Somali interns, volunteers, opportunities. So then you have one, if you know there are a lot of paperwork, that your office does, bring people in. Try to recruit staff into your strategic plan. That way, you will intentionally know if this mother, like now we have a lot of refugees with a large family size, 11 kids, and oh my God, there is no way on earth that no other one organization can fill all those applications. So if you have a small area and you do like a 1-month clinic where families can come in and all the forms are filled out, there is a collaboration with community organizations, colleges, mosques, masjids can play a role. So that, and then the other thing is you just have to really wing it and be very creative. Also, you can develop a community-based organization, a relationship, and say, hey, I have 3 or 4 families that I'm going through this application, and give us a call, give another organization a call and say, could you help this family fill out these forms? And then you have that bridge being built so the families are not getting frustrated. Yes?
So as a follow-up to that, what is your perspective, or how do you understand this? It's still perpetuating the notion of people coming and getting something done for them, whereas how do you support a sense of agency? I guess I agree with you, but I would push back a little and say, well, instead of having the interns be the ones to fill out the forms, does it feel like it makes sense to have the interns sit with the families and say, hey, let's figure out how to do this together? Because I'm thinking about that sense of agency, but that's from my perspective and my middle class entitlement of growing up here. So I'm interested in your perspective.
I think you and I are the same, but here's the reality. One of the ways to turn people off is that when a woman never went to school, or maybe she went to school and she barely writes, and you say, let's fill out the form, you're also killing her internally. You're reminding her all the opportunities she missed. So it's the ESO. Yep. So what I'm saying is so there are different layers. That sense of agency is the goal of every one of us. How do we make them independent? But when she's starting the process of receiving services, we need what we can do is the fastest that we can better get that service going, then she can attend the ESL school. Then she can have her kids into a daycare. Then she can find a job. So the journey is we can't just switch 30 years of illiteracy. So I totally get it, but we have to start from somewhere. And she has that sense of agency already because she's been in, it's been a lot of challenges, but that woman who's illiterate really knows where she's going. She just needs us to fuel that light of hope by making the faster process and not reminding her how much of she missed on her life. And then when women and migration started in U.S. Embassy after 9/11, mom and children are the only one who go through the process. So I've seen many of my friends, or not so friends, very critical. Bunch of single moms. I don't understand they're wearing this swearing thingy about the way they dress, the sense of restlessness that these women are showing, the impatience, the internal fight. The dads are left behind because of their men, they're Muslim, they're Somali. So they have to go through so much process that some of them come to Minnesota after 10 years or 8 years, and then they come to Somali woman with 9 or 8 kids who had developed sense of independency, even though she's still on a government or she's still working, that she has nothing to do with the guy. Because he comes in and says, oh, I'm just gonna lay low and cook clean for me like back home. And she's like, get out. So she has been single for 10 years or 8 years by herself. So she learned how to navigate the system without him. So at the beginning, she came here with no choice of leaving her husband behind. But when he comes in, then there's a cultural clash. Women want their own independence, and they're fighting for their own right way of doing. So you have, the war had done this awful things, and I've done a lot of lit review, and really this happens everywhere that war starts. Women tend to be the victims. Minnesota nice, really, racism. I hear a lot of bad things. Just a second, honey. A lot of bad things, a lot of bad things. Oh, they're draining our resources out. Oh, all we're doing is serving them. I know. DHS budget every year goes to $1 billion or so up because there are more poverty, more people to give. People are sick and tired of being given. They came from refugee camps. All they want is a little bit of help them stand their own 2 feet, be part of the journey. You know, ancestors who came here a long time ago didn't become independent just like that. They rely on one another and they rely on their own neighborhood or neighbor. They had a farm to farm. There is no farm to farm here. Opportunities are the hands of people and the people who they don't know. So a lot of criticism, very, 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 very criticism. And on the other end, when one person does bad things, now there are televisions, you really don't need to say anything. They're like, okay, I came here, I've gone through so much hell already. All I need to do now is, I don't need to go to school, my kids, my kids, my kids. That's all women care about, not herself. So I'm so glad that we're working on respite care. Female household, if a lot of people are wondering, well, why on earth there are only women? I just answered that question. After 9/11, still we restarted last year for ORR grant, about 80 families. They're all female household led. The data we collected exactly supports after 9/11, men are left behind. And when they come after years later, divorce is inevitable because there's a cultural clash. He's not in charge anymore. And we don't have family relationship, family consultants that are in between who are building that relationship and keeping the marriage together. And then, disparity. Minnesota has one of the worst disparity. People of color, indigenous people, we're immigrants, so we're at the bottom of the barrel. Add that to language barrier, looking weird and different, wearing all those clothes. We are not different. So we are at that boat. Couple things, I won't gonna go through this, and you will have this slide. When it comes down to services and healthcare, everything is different. Immunization, having babies, for instance, the most critical, if you take away anything here, transactional is how our system is done. Hey, your number, you come in, I did my job, go away. I don't need to get to know you. You want to get to know them, but they're not in your socioeconomic area. They're not in your social class. They're not. So you came to do a job and you do your job. The demographic changes, and what we want, hopefully, and be part of your journey and teach you how to develop a relationship beyond the service you're doing, beyond what you're doing. So as you're spending 8 hours of your day in serving someone, come with it. Be more generous and more humble and more understanding. So think about as transferring your knowledge. Think about next time she comes in, yes, we fill out the form, but next time she can look at you and say, so-and-so did this to me, I need you to help me out. So then you're becoming that connector. You may get a lot of Somali women coming to you, but that should make you feel good. It really does to me. So in terms of healthcare access, back home didn't have healthcare access because the few things that existed, the war had destroyed. And women, Somali has one of the highest infant and maternal mortality rate. 1 in 5 child doesn't even reach 1 year, according to the World Health Organization. Women are dying in labor because of the female genital cutting, famine and malnutrition, and then infection. So if you can just copy this and put on the wall, you can see the total difference between USA health system and our system. We're totally different. Part of the work we're doing right now is how do we make a bridge? So it doesn't have to be either or. Our community needs to have some behavioral changes and adapt something, and then we as the service providers can also learn, because the ultimate goal is to serve people out where they are. And then the cultural difference is really, the Americans, I'm not telling you what I didn't already told you. I hear many, many people who are really pissed and so mad at the community. racism creeps into a frustration. Oh, these women are so oppressed. Oh, this religion guy is the only one who talks to them. And once you already have that attitude and people come and try to take your service, they can see right through you. When you don't speak the language, you're almost like a deaf. Your sensory goes so high that they can just see you what you're doing, and you cannot fake it totally. There are so many women who say, oh, I just met her. Why your face is like that? Oh, she was smiling and she was doing all this, but she was totally fake. I can see that. And I'm like, how do you know? She's like, I know. But I know the person already that exactly that's what she does or that's what he does. So really, this is a journey. I don't want to discourage you, but we're not going to fix the systems. The system is a computer, is a building. It's us individually really need to look at each other and say, what am I doing my own individual? How can I better myself? And reality needs to set in. We're not the majority of a state. We're not majority of a country. And that is driving a lot of people crazy. But I'm hoping that through the relationship that Evan and Erica and us are developing, we can have a community that learns together, understands together, and I totally get it. The environment that we're all white, it's becoming brown, and you don't understand people, especially our community, we're Muslim, you don't understand. So with all the dooms and all the things that you see, there is a hope. Somali community, despite of everything. And when I get frustrated and I work with a lot of people who are not understanding the work I do, I came from Park Nickel Health Services. I was informatics at work, and my job was really to make the healthcare system better by moving from the paperwork into electronic system. So my job was really looking at how patients are served. And so my job, I quit and I came to work with Isuroon. And all I see is the work we're doing is really how can we make individuals better? How can we give them the opportunity for them not to need us anymore? But for them to reach that, you really need to focus on individuals' hearts and what takes the self-esteem out of people. Looking down on, you don't need to verbalize to someone that you either detest or you really are frustrated. So what I'm appealing to you today is when you see this, when you see despair, you see, oh my God, I need to hug her, I need to save her. She probably lost that kid, the infant that's laying there. Because remember, 1 in 4 don't even reach that. And Farah said that still kids and infants are dying. But you'll be seeing mothers like this who had lost 4 or 5 kids, and she has few of them now with them. And she will do everything in her power to get them going, to save them, to help them out. So you look at this and you say, oh my God, how on earth? I want that passion not to turn into looking down, not to turn into doing things for them. Do things for them, but help them out. Do knowledge transfer. When this woman comes in, she needs to be stabilized. Right now, we receive crisis after crisis of families who don't have enough food to eat. The welfare system does not cover a family of 8, family of 9's food. We have food shelf. So now what do? We stock on rice and pasta and oil. If someone is hungry and she already been in a refugee camp, you can see the automatic anxiety coming in. The wheel is turning. The experience comes back. And you talk about postpartum depression. You talk about stress. They're reliving the story over there. They should not be. So what do you see? What I want you to picture on moving forward is a woman who needs an opportunity. Every one of us need an opportunity. We give opportunities to these communities, they will help their kids and move out, help them out. Our religion requires us to be a contributor to our society, not just being dependent on. I want to repeat that. Our religion requires us to contribute. So the idea that someone is going to be living under someone else's hand and it becomes a way of life, it actually debilitates our religion belief system. So those people who believe that we're just takers, it's not true. The system is building us people to be just takers, because that's how power is being viewed. That's how things are done. We're new, but that is how Native Americans and other communities have been done. So we don't want to be receiving handouts. We don't want to be poverty of receiving resources to be way of life. We have been already in refugee camps 20, 30 years. We're screaming for independence, but it's going to take time and journey and your support. So, okay, Somali women, people talk about, oh, they're oppressed. My scarf. I was a tomboy. My mom, I wouldn't even let my hair grow before the war. You couldn't tell I was a boy or a girl. Can you believe it? If you look at the woman from the left, it's 1940s. Look at that woman from the left. She is free as anyone else, long time ago. So progressiveness and all that stuff, before America talked about women, we were struggling with different issues, but the scarves and how women dressed, we were free to do whatever we want. Now we chose to. Some of us chose to wear scarves. Some of us chose to wear different and become more religious. But we always, 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 always had a woman that was very strong. It's strong in a sense, not money and class, but it's strong in a sense of really creating social network that the bond is very strong, that they go through labor, losing infant, being in a domestic violence. Their emotional intelligence is unbelievable. That is what I worry about when refugees come in. They lose the sense of very strong, very strength, that poverty and being looked down into and depending on someone else, and also feeling the sense of helplessness that what she went through, the idea that her kid may be stuck on poverty. So, 1940s, 2016. They're identical, just two different worlds. That's Iman, one of our Somali models. Steps for solution, and then I'll go through this fast. Let's collaborate. What you're doing today is the beginning. I don't want this to end, but today is going to end, but then I want us to come back. I want us to, as I'm talking to you, I'm learning so much. Our millennials are also learning so much. They want to assimilate so fast that they don't want to speak Somali. But I tell them, hey, if you don't speak Somali, you won't be able to help your own community and build bridges. So we're now in a race to keep the Somali language for our young people, because they are not American enough, they're not black enough, and they're not Somali enough anymore. So if you're dealing with youth, if you're dealing with young people, they're in different an environment and different worlds, so be cognizant about. Collaboration already, I'm like so in love with our relationship. I feel like I want to keep it going, and hopefully we will going. Think outside the box. I always say, well, what do I need to do? I don't want to offend these people, or I don't want to offend. You're not going to offend anybody. Please just relax. I do a lot of things, and I offend a lot of Minnesotans, and the next day I'm normal, and I will see my friend Nat. I feel the energy. I was like, what have I done? Oh, you were very mean to me the other day. Which other day? That was a year ago. I don't remember. I just don't. And I'm like, what did I do? You did this to us. And I'm like, why are you keeping that for a year? You should have told me. And I say, come here, I hug you, and then I'm done. So Somalis are very blunt talkers, meaning that we will tell you how we feel, and then we go home, there's nothing in it. So we have a communication problem. Minnesota people are not very, they call it not saying up front. We say it, we say what we're saying, and then we go, and the next day, I want to have tea and have a relationship. So we have a communication differences. We have a different way of talking. So let's talk to each other, let's collaborate one another. And then Somalis, last thing I want to say about I think most of the Africans, we do not see. I can tell you in 100% on a testimony, even though many of us came from refugee camp, I left Somalia before the war. I do not see a white person as superior to me. We didn't grow up in America. We didn't see the oppressive and racism that had been done to people of color. lot of professors, managers get mad because we're very forward. It's like we're treating you same as another human being. And people who get used to working with people of color and other communities who feel very superior feel very offended that this idiot immigrant is really confrontational. That's what they call it. We call it we're having conversation. I feel something is wrong. I don't care who you are. I want to have a conversation with you. So you need to understand where we're coming from. We did not grow up feeling less oppressed for a person of a white Caucasian. That is also where you're losing a lot of stuff. Many of you hire, and within 6 months, you lost a talent individual because she doesn't belong to the environment and she doesn't feel she has to be in a box and behave different way.